Hi, everybody.
Hey, it's my wife.
It's the Walshes, and we're here for week 5 lecture video. Today is Sunday, September 22nd, and this week we have on Wednesday, we have our CT1 due. It's a real quick, short 2-page paper, add a couple graphs. John recorded a video explaining how to do it. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. If you're like, hey, am I doing this right? Or can you look at a draft, whatever, reach out to me and let me know.
If you're new to the course, here's the video right there. So it's always chronologically, and it's also embedded in, if you come down here, if we look at the assignments. So this is, we call it critical thinking assignment. And number 1, it's 2 to 3 pages of text, and then in addition you put your figures. Okay. Yeah. Read these instructions. I'm not going to do it over again.
If you don't turn it in, you'll get a reminder email. That's an automated reminder email that I have set up in Brightspace. So it will go out to you and it will say, "Dear John, we noticed that you didn't turn in CT1," and then we explain what you need to do. Awesome. So don't panic if you get that email, even if you've already talked to us about it.
And then Julie put in how to use Brightspace, and also in the how-to folders, how to upload it into. It automatically uploads it into
Turn it in. Yeah.
And
so you don't have to look for a turn it in link.
Very cool. But it's a sad day in football land, isn't it? So
multiple sad days in football land.
Sadly, Trojans played valiantly, but they lost, and it's going to happen. I can't even imagine having to fly back to Michigan and play. How hard that must be. Yeah. And then the Saints lost, so the world is caving in.
It is.
Julia's
it's
world.
a rough day for me, but
she's a New Orleans Saint fan, big time. So.
I'm going to try to struggle through. Right. But Matt Leinart said today on Instagram, he said it's a long season and it's fine. You can lose a game and still be fine, so don't worry about it.
Hey, just like it's a long semester and you can screw up and still be fine.
That's right.
All right, cool. All right, let's go straight into it then. I'm going to use the table of contents.
Go down to week 5.
Toggle. You can see where I was recently. Okay, I was in week 4. You can tell I was week 4 by looking right there. Okay. But now we're going to week 5, and we're doing cancer, and Julia's doing this because she's a cancer survivor. She, in fact,
I have my shirt on.
Yeah, there it is.
Fighting blood cancer.
Yeah. She actually just got done with 14 months of what's called targeted therapy. It wasn't chemotherapy. It's a unique approach. Still no free lunch, and she took her last pill Wednesday of last week.
Yay.
She had to take 4 pills a day. The cost of these pills, if it was not for health insurance, would probably have been about $150,000.
But it worked really well.
And this is why you guys have to vote, because the whole healthcare cost thing is a big part of it. We could be here forever talking about
this. You got to keep Professor Walsh's drugs paid.
Yeah. Okay.
It's all about me right now.
Awesome. All right. Anyway. So scroll down. This video is going to be going right in here. All right. And this is the reading assignment. You tell me where you want to go. You want to straight in there?
You can go into the reading assignment.
All right, cool.
So what we do every year is we try to show you data about cancer and what cancers people are being diagnosed with and what cancers people are dying from. This data is always a look backwards. So if you get diagnosed today with cancer, you're going to get different treatments than someone who was diagnosed 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. The world of cancer research is moving forward very, very rapidly.
It's a scary diagnosis, as indicated here. And I'm teaching a course for the future doctors that are at our university, pre-meds, about cancer. And I start with, I could point to men and go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and why are you doing that? Because 1 out of every 2 of us are going to get cancer in our lifetime. That's just public health, looking across the board epidemiology. Women are about 1 every 3, but it's still, these are really crazy odds, and this is why it's so important to be informed.
For most people, cancer diagnosis comes when you get older. So yes. I was diagnosed in 2013 when I was 50, and because of the advances in treatment that have happened since I was diagnosed, I'm still doing really well. And I have a chronic leukemia that isn't going to go away. It's not curable, but periodically I need treatment again to knock it back down. Right. So if you know someone who's recently diagnosed, or if later this semester you know someone who gets diagnosed, Everyone's scared when it happens, when you get the bad news, but there's a lot to be hopeful about right now because of the advances in research and treatment.
And it's
So,
appropriate. It's in this class that's about aging because, like Julia said, age is the greatest risk factor for getting cancer. And, why is that? Well, we have this constant renewal of our cells where things go wrong, and then we go in there and repair them. It's like having an old car; you keep repairing, but the ability to repair these genes that control cell growth goes kind of downhill when you get older, and then all of a sudden you get the bad DNA repair. You get mutations that then become oncogenes and screwed up tumor suppressor genes that we're going to talk about today, and then you get cancer.
Yeah.
So it's age.
So we're going to talk about what you can do to reduce your risk of cancer, because about 50% of cancers are attributable to basically, I don't want to say lifestyle choices, but things that you do, behaviors that you can modify to reduce your risk. So there's a lot that you can do to control your risk, and things that you can do to make sure that you get diagnosed early so that you have the most treatment options. So let's dive into the data.
I want to mention these websites? Or
yes,
just,
yeah. So we're looking at data from the National Cancer Institute. They put out a report called the SEER report. It should come out annually. The most recent one has been delayed, I suspect possibly because of the difficulty in gathering the data during the pandemic, but hopefully we'll get back on track soon. When we talk about cancer data, we talk about the cancer incidence rate, which is per 100,000 people, so that we normalize that data. And then we look at the mortality rate, which is how many people per 100,000 people died.
And when you look at incidence, that means the increase that year.
Yes.
So I always
remember newly diagnosed
So it's
cancer cases.
Because when you hear public health officials talking and epidemiologists, they'll say words like incidence, and the best word is the IN, means increase, because there's another one that they'll use which is called prevalence, and that's not the increase that year. That's just if you took a snapshot and said, hey, okay, how many people have cancer this year? That's the prevalence.
So that would accumulate over time.
Yeah.
So one thing to note about new cancer diagnoses is that during the pandemic, it went down not because people weren't getting cancer, it was because people weren't going to the doctor. And sometimes you'll see the cancer cases will go up, sometimes because there's an actual increase in the number of cases, sometimes because there's an easier way to diagnose, or more people are going in and getting tested. And so you have to really kind of study the data and understand the data to be able to distinguish when it's real or when it's just an artifact of how many people are getting tested.
Science is getting better at detecting than it ever used to be too. So, but yeah, there was a troubling increase in cancer in people under the age of 30.
So there's a little blip in the data that scientists are watching right now. It appears to be GI type of cancers that may be related to diet. And so eat your veggies, eat your fiber.
Processed food, it is what it is.
Yes, don't eat processed food, all the time. Try to have a variety of a diet. And as John and I always say, eat the rainbow.
Right.
So
okay.
anyway.
So Julie got some figures here that were taken from this report that she was talking about.
Exactly. So overall, cancer death rates are going down. Our treatments are improving. People are getting diagnosed sooner in most cases. So we're seeing a decrease in cancer death rates. That's good. And in some cases, we're seeing a decrease in cancer incidence, and cancer diagnosis. So the two cancers where we see the most remarkable decrease in death rates are lung cancer and melanoma. And that's because we have these new treatments. We have these new checkpoint inhibitors that are new targeted drugs, and they help your immune system attack the cancer. And so they're much more effective than the chemotherapy treatments that we had available to us previously. So that if you're diagnosed today with lung cancer, or you're diagnosed today with metastatic melanoma, your prognosis is much better than it was 5 or 10 or 15 years ago.
Chemotherapy would kill off any cell that was dividing, so it was brutal. But like I said, these checkpoint inhibitors are really cool because the immune system is doing checkpoints. Basically, it's going around. It's like a hunting dog, and it's sniffing. You smell like cancer. You smell like cancer. Okay, when it goes and smells, the sound says you smell like cancer. Then it will attack it. But freaking cancer cells. They develop
They
these
like to hide.
they had to develop these checkpoint inhibitors. Okay, and so the immune system will be going for it, and the cancer says no. I'm not cancer, and then the immune system says okay, and it goes the other way. And so these new drugs go in there and block that, which is really cool. They get rid of that ability of cancer to do that, and the immune system attacks.
Yeah. So let's go down the cancer death rates for children and what we call AYAs, adolescents and young adults, have declined. So that's really good. And we see a much higher participation in clinical trials among children and adolescents than we do among everyone else. So that helps push forward the research into the diseases that children get, the cancers that children get. If you want to know how to reduce your risk of cancer, there's certain risks that we know about. Sun exposure for skin cancers, which is probably one of the more common skin types of cancer. Don't smoke. Cigarettes contribute to a lot of different types of cancers, including lung cancer. You need to get regular exercise. You need to eat healthy, a plant-based diet, a Mediterranean diet. Eat, in moderation. You need drink moderately. Heavy alcohol consumption is linked to a lot of different types of cancers, and that's sadly for no one wants to hear this, but 1 drink a day for women, 2 drinks for men. And obviously, if you have 1 week where things are a little bit out of control, maybe the next week you do a little bit better. If you're
Or do what we do. We'll drink one day, and the next day we do sparkling water because it's kind of like sucking on a binky. You get so scheduled. You get home from work and it's like, I want to drink, but if you just stick something in your mouth and go like this, and then it goes away.
if you smoke, try to reduce the
Another
amount of
binky.
smoking you do, and maybe exercise more. So you can kind of juggle your risks. So the thing that I wanted to really communicate to you about smoking is we think smoking and we think lung cancer. But what smoking does is it goes into your body. It affects your lungs, of course, but the smoke is inhaled. So it goes down and affects your larynx and your esophagus and your throat. So you've got oral cavity cancers and throat cancers. The chemicals from the smoke that you inhale go into your bladder. So they can cause bladder cancer. It can affect your liver because your liver helps purify things in your body. It can increase the amount of kidney cancer, stomach cancer. It can cause colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer.
That's
So
just
there's
because
all
it's in
these
the
different
blood.
things.
It's just in the blood at that point. But you can see, these guys, like Julie was saying, this is like first pass exposure to the nasty carcinogens, and then they get in the blood, and then it starts going after these guys. But you can see, boom, it's just, it's like taking a flamethrower to this part of your body. So.
Yeah, my dad was living proof of this chart. He was initially diagnosed with kidney cancer. He was treated, did well. He was diagnosed with bladder cancer. He was still undergoing treatment for that. Periodically, he'd go in and get an infusion of his bladder. Then he was diagnosed with lung cancer. So he was kind of sadly, a 3-time loser in terms of a lifelong smoker and what can happen. So keep going down. Exercise is great. A lot of you are exercising more while you're in college. You have to maintain that healthy activity after you get out of school, and that can be really hard. You're starting a job, maybe you have kids, maybe you're busy, you're juggling a lot of responsibilities, maybe you're helping take care of your parents. But try to set aside a little bit of time, even if it's just parking farther away from the door of the grocery store or taking the stairs instead of an elevator. Then you get to be older like us, and you have time every morning to walk the dog. So then you're
That gives you all the money. You're not accountable anymore. It's awesome.
But our kids are adults, so as you get older, you may find, and when you talk to your parents, you may find that they have more time for exercise now than they did when they were in their 20s or 30s or 40s.
And I'll tell you, ever since COVID, I don't take elevators. What's the point? If I got to go 1, 2, 3 floors, that's easy. So I just walk the stairs.
So exercise helps with, go back up, some of the big cancers, the common cancers: breast cancer, colon cancer, endometrial cancer for women. Go down.
Those are the ones that have been heavily investigated. I'm sure it goes beyond that. But.
So here's the bad news for college students. Alcohol use is strongly associated with colorectal cancers, female breast cancers. Does that mean that if you drank while you're in college that you're automatically going to get cancer. No, we're looking at alcohol exposure over years, if
Right.
not
It's a long
decades.
haul. Yes.
So just when you get a little bit
If
older,
you're,
try to moderate it.
if you're 50, 60
Um,
years of age and you've been drinking your whole life, then yeah, maybe that was part of it. So
Yeah, so definitely something that we can control is reducing our alcohol risk. So these little charts that we're going to get into, the red bars mean an increase, the blue bars mean a decrease. So this, go back up.
yeah, I'm
I
showing
made
the
the
blue.
I made the picture really big on
No, that's
the
good.
Brightspace site. So these are new cancers. So men are getting diagnosed with prostate cancer. That's the most common new cancer, probably because it's an easy test. It's a blood test. So you can go in and get your blood checked, and by the time you're in your 60s, you're probably getting that done once a year. So they're able to detect it pretty readily. Pancreatic cancer is, obviously a cancer that doesn't get diagnosed as easily. There's not an easy blood test yet. There are some new research showing the possibility of using what I call a liquid biopsy, where they take your blood and look for little tiny circulating DNA fragments that have fallen off cancer cells. And so that
Just do
is,
a blood draw,
yeah.
and these new tests can detect
So
it.
potentially in the future, that would be useful for things like colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, where the alternative is getting imaging that's expensive or colonoscopies that are not super fun. And so making it easy, you just go once a year and
Oh,
you get a blood test and it'll say, hey, you possibly could have one of these cancers, and then they'll do more tests.
but you just got to get insurance companies on board for
Yes,
this, which,
well,
and
it's
so this
coming.
is all the
It's
politics,
coming.
so that's why you got to vote.
And so for women, melanoma is the most common new
New
cancer
forms of
cases.
cancer.
And then
And
things
then you,
like
you wear sunscreen and hats, I mean, it is, we got to do that. So
liver and kidney cancer that are related to diet, they're related to alcohol use, they're related to exercise or lack of exercise. That can all affect those things. So. And then the good news is if we scroll down and we can see we're seeing fewer cases of lung cancer in men, probably because of a decrease of smoking. Not everywhere is like California, but California has some pretty strict rules. You can't smoke, in public buildings. You can't smoke in restaurants. Back in the day, I remember when people used to be able to smoke on airplanes. I mean, it was a wild, wild west for a long, long time. And so having those community public health policies reduces the amount of smoking, makes it a little bit harder to do. And more people say, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. It's inconvenient. I'm going to quit. And so we see a decrease in lung cancer. Okay. And now we look at the death rates.
that looks a
So,
lot better than the other graph, doesn't it?
yeah.
Okay, it does.
so,
That's science.
so anyway, we see a few types of cancer where the death rates are increasing for both men and women. But again, if we look down at the bottom of the page, lung and melanoma are the biggest two categories where we see the biggest decreases in death rates because of these new checkpoint
New tools.
inhibitors. So that's really good. So I think the the news is good in terms of people are getting diagnosed but maybe not dying as quickly as they
And
used
it's
to.
the power of the immune system is that is, the last 20 years has been everything. And what you guys don't realize is all day long, you make mutated funky cells that are precancerous cancers, and your immune system, even in your 20s is attacking them and getting rid of them. And then you put out new good guys. So we can increase the power of the immune system. It's all that. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the COVID pandemic, and we should be paying attention to this. This may not be the last pandemic we have, but it really shows that link between the pandemic causing people to be afraid to go to the doctor, or afraid to leave their house, or maybe they didn't have easy transportation, or maybe it was just hard to get an appointment. So fewer people were going to the doctor. So then fewer people were getting routine care, fewer people were getting routine screening. I am super, super, super dedicated because of my cancer is a cancer of the immune system. I'm at very high risk of getting a second cancer. So
Because the immune system attacks
yeah.
cancers,
So
right?
I'm really diligent in terms of getting all of my screening tests, my mammograms, my colonoscopies, my skin cancer checks. But you know what? During the pandemic, there was a period of time when I was so high risk that I didn't go get my mammogram. So then I had to kind of get caught up. So we had these people that weren't getting colonoscopies, weren't getting mammograms, weren't getting screened, and doctors were doing telehealth appointments instead of actually laying hands and eyes on a patient. So you're going to miss some stuff. So that means delayed diagnosis. That means sometimes fewer treatment options, or in some cases, if the cancer is so advanced, you might be able to control it but not cure it. So we're seeing what we're expecting to see, and that we'll have to watch the data in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You can scroll down to the next chart. What we're expecting to see is excess deaths from colorectal and breast cancers because of this delayed screening. So if I can give you not a real homework assignment, but just a friendly word of advice, go ask your family members who are my age. You're maybe not your mom's, because I'm old enough to be your grandma, but go ask your older family members, hey, have you had your colonoscopies recently? Have you had your mammograms recently? If you got out of the habit of doing it because of the pandemic, get back in there and get those appointments. And once you're in the system, they usually remind you after a year, hey, you're due for your next mammogram.
And her family, again, you have families like her. So her aunt, is all in the same family. On both sides had breast cancer. Okay, and then
ovarian cancer.
Her dad had cancer. So there's there can be genes that are supposed to be going there, sniffing out cancers and repairing the mutations that are not working as well. It's just we all look different. The same thing over there. For me, I don't have cancer fans, but I have a habit that is being in the sun, surfing all the time. And so what do? I go see the dermatologist not twice, but I see him 3 times a year, because I get these precancerous lesions from being in the sun all the time now. And that's, if you have a family member like that, tell them to go see the dermatologist as well.
Yes, we want all of our fair-skinned Irish students
people.
See that. Actually, I go too. I have darker skin, but I still see the dermatologist once a year for a skin
because
cancer.
Because she's at risk for
check.
all cancers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So
this is something to keep your eyes on, guys.
Yeah, so we'll be watching that.
If you don't diagnose it early, then it progresses earlier. It can butt off and metastasize, meaning it goes everywhere, and then it's much harder to fight off with drugs, and people then sadly will die more often. So
okay, and now here's where I get really fired up. I'm a cancer advocate. I talk to cancer patients all around the world about hey, you've just been newly diagnosed. What do you need to do? What are the next steps? How do you get access to the best treatment? If we look at our incidence rates and we look at, white people have the highest incidence rate, that tells me they're getting diagnosed more often than other people. Black people are second, or actually no.
This is non-Hispanic, Black, Latinos.
Yeah.
Okay.
American Indian, Alaskan Natives are also very high. But if you go to the right and you look at the death rates, and this is for both sexes combined, you see that the highest death rates are non-Hispanic Black Americans. And then next are American Indian, Alaskan Natives. And then next are white people. Asian Pacific Islanders are fairly low, and Hispanics are fairly low.
We see the Black people right here have the highest death rate, and that shows you that there are inequities in terms of healthcare in our country.
In the healthcare system. So this really concerns me, because the color of your skin and your ethnic heritage should never be a reason for you to be dying from cancer and not getting access to treatment. So we've really got to work hard as a community, and all of us that are going to, all of you that are pre-meds and are going to go to medical school, we've really got to work hard to improve access to healthcare and access to treatment to all groups in the U.S. If you look at men and women, we see kind of the same pattern.
In terms of the ethnicities.
Yes. So on the left, we have the incidence rates, and on the right, we have the death rates. So Black men have the highest death rate from cancer. Alaskan Natives and American Indians are next. For women, it's Black women, and then American Indian, Alaska Natives next, and then non-Hispanic whites.
So this is kind of work the public health officials. This is what they, wrap their whole lives around. Is when you understand these trends, then you can
Then you have to dig into it and see what is
see what's
happening.
going on.
So I gave you links to some of the American Cancer Society's reports. And so they delve down deeper into what's going on with Black Americans, what's going on with Hispanic Americans, what's going on with Asian Pacific Islander Americans, and to see what are the factors that they think might be an issue. And to some extent, it can just be racism and the inability to access care. It can be socioeconomic status. So you may have less insurance, but then when they look at people that have private insurance, they still see that Black Americans have a lower cancer survival rate than white people do, even if they have the same insurance. So
there's food, there's doctor deserts like there's food deserts,
yeah, yeah,
it's just
yeah.
what it is. So it's, doctors do not open up practices in the inner city as often as they do out in the suburbs where people have lots of
It's
insurance and can
it's
pay.
also for me going through this recently when I had to get my prescription. I was doing some infusions at the cancer center, but I had an oral pill that I had to take. So when I had to get my prescription filled, there were hurdles after hurdles after hurdles that were set up by the insurance company, so that I remember one day I spent maybe 3 hours on the phone with the pharmacy trying to deal with all of these hurdles. Now I have a job that on a Tuesday, I can sit at my kitchen table and spend 3 hours on the phone trying to get my prescription processed. But if I worked in an hourly job, or if I worked as I did when I was younger, if I worked as a waitress in a restaurant, I can't just go into the back and make a phone call for 3 hours. So those hurdles in terms of access to healthcare can really impact different groups of the population
And
differently.
you need to have lots of access to tech and be tech savvy. I mean, when
Yeah.
she was doing this, she had the computer open. She had three people on the phone. It was just,
And because I'm an attorney and I have a history of specializing in disability rights and healthcare and insurance law, I'm able to navigate that. But I said to John many times, you shouldn't have to be a lawyer to get healthcare. But it helps. It does help a lot. So the good news, and this is my other thing I'm very passionate about, if someone had come to me 15 years ago and said, hey, we could give you a shot and it would mean that you don't get leukemia, I would have said, hell yeah. Okay, so there is a shot that keeps you from getting a laundry list of cancers, and it's the HPV vaccine. Now, my kids, my sons, are 28 and 23. So when they were coming up, the 28-year-old, it was still pretty new, and they were recommending it for teenage girls, but not necessarily for boys. And I did a little bit of research, and I said, hey, wait a minute, I think I want to go ahead and get this vaccine for my son. Um, just because I think it's a good idea. Later on, the research came out that a lot of men were getting oral cancers, rectal cancers, and other cancers that were related to HPV. So it's not just a cervical cancer issue, although we should care if it's cervical cancer, but it's a whole laundry list of cancers that you can get. And the other thing that I tell people is
that have to do with intimacy. It is what it
yes,
is.
HPV is everywhere. It's not like, hey, you're hanging with the wrong crowd and you
No, it's
got
everywhere.
HPV.
It's
We
everywhere.
all get exposed to it, but some of us, our immune systems fight it off, and some of us, our immune systems don't. So,
Some of us got married young and were devoted to each other.
and we probably were still,
Still exposed.
exposed to HPV.
Not that young.
So, yeah. Probably TMI.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
But look at those trends,
so
right?
I'm a very big fan. The data that's coming out with HPV, the vaccination uptake rate in the U.S., Australia's ahead of us. They anticipate that their cervical cancer rate will drop to almost zero. This is a chart showing just cervical cancer rates among all races and ethnicities, white, Black, and Hispanic. We're seeing the new cases dropping, 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 dropping. I love that. I love that. So if you can get a shot to prevent cancer, let's do it. There's a lot of research on other vaccines that will help prevent other types of cancers. And like I said, 8 out of 10 people are going to get exposed to HPV. They're going to get infected with
It's
HPV.
obviously, 80% of the population doesn't have throat cancer or cervical
Yeah.
cancer. So it's the exposure along with your unique genetics that's
Yeah.
going to put it
So
together.
35,000 Americans get diagnosed with an HPV-related cancer. About half, not half of them, 14,000 are men, 21,000 are women. So it does affect everybody. And so I just think it's a great thing to do. You can get diagnosed up to the age of 26. After 26, it's a conversation you have with your doctor.
Look what the vaccine did.
Yes.
See? Awesome.
So anyway, I love it. I love the fact that we have new tools in the tool chest to help prevent cancers and new tools in the tool chest to help treat cancers. So it's not the end of the world if you get diagnosed.
Okay.
So let's go down a little bit.
Here's what is cancer.
Yes,
Okay.
so that's a link back to our PDF file that we uploaded.
Yeah.
And then we have this cool video about cancer biology, and it walks you through, kind of the basics of this is what happens. You have all these cells in your body. Sometimes they get damaged by the sun or radiation or something you ate or just, whatever. The cells get damaged.
Virus. We just heard about a virus.
Yeah, exactly. It can be viral. Hepatitis causes liver cancer. So anyway, so you can have these cells that get damaged. Normal cells, there's a process called apoptosis where the normal cells, they get damaged and something comes in and says, oh, you need to die. So you're a bad cell, you're not working very well, we're going to kill you off.
There's an internal machinery that's too much DNA damage, you're dead.
So it goes in and cleans things up.
And that's done via what are called tumor suppressor genes that you're going to learn later on.
Okay? But cancer cells, they don't stop dividing and they don't die when they're supposed to. When they have a defect, they don't die.
And it's all because of genetics. Both pathways are genetically altered.
Yeah, so you have DNA in all of your cells. You probably learned this in high school. You have DNA in all of your cells that get mutated, and then that causes typically the cancerous cells to develop.
Too much growth and too little DNA repair and too little pruning or apoptosis of the bad ones. In fact, the most common gene in cancer is P53.
P53.
And that's one of those apoptosis, get rid of the bad guy.
And elephants don't typically get cancer because they have many, many copies of P53 to prevent cancer as a tumor suppressor gene.
Cool.
So this is our graphic. This is a quiz question that students tend to have a little more trouble with. And I may go back and increase that graphic size because it looks a little small on our computer.
Wait a minute, I know what to do. Is it going to do it sometime? Nope, there it is.
Yeah, but I mean,
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're doing it the easy way.
Yes.
So anyway, so you have a proto-oncogene. That is a normal, what we call wild type, unmutated gene that is in your body
that makes you grow. That
puts the gas in the car to make your cells grow.
It's a really unfortunate choice of a term.
Yeah.
And then you hear oncogene like, cancer?
Yeah.
No.
Then you have a tumor suppressor gene that suppresses tumors. So that's the brakes on normal cells. When you have mutations, that proto-oncogene turns into an oncogene. The oncogene means too much growth, too much division. Then you get those rapidly dividing cancer cells. And the tumor suppressor gene, like P53, gets inactivated, so you don't have a brake anymore. So elephants have many, many copies of the P53 gene. Humans only have 2, one on each chromosome, one on each pair, right? Chromosome pair. So when it gets inactivated, you might have one inactivated or both inactivated, and that tends to lead to a lot of different types of cancers. So,
awesome.
Okay, you're gonna make it small again.
I'm gonna make it small again.
Okay, so I keep adding to this section because I'm so excited about cancer. This is the most recent thing I added, I think, this year, is just to give you information about screening tests. So colorectal cancer. And again, you've got to look at your family history and have a conversation with your doctor about your family history. So your doctor might say to you, hey, you're in your 20s, but in your family, you have a condition where people have a lot of polyps, so you're higher risk. So I think you should get screened sooner. Prostate cancer, typically around 45, you might start talking to your doctor. It's an easy blood
It's
test,
called a
no big deal.
PSA test, the
Um,
prostate-specific antigen. Antigen is the unique protein on the prostate. So if you have just tumors going, then more of the antigen gets shed, and you can detect it in the blood.
yeah. Breast cancer screening, we're learning a lot about how to get the most effective screening. So for women who have dense breasts, you might have to have additional tests. I am very high risk because of my family history, high risk because of my leukemia, and I have dense breasts. So I'm going to start getting breast MRIs and alternating a mammogram with a breast MRI.
And
So there's a lot of,
they have a 3D mammogram that's
yeah,
kind of standard
yeah.
care that everybody does now.
And
So
there's all this discussion in the literature about, oh, what about people who get false positives? You know what? I've had false positives. It's a bummer for a couple days. Then you have to get more tests. Then they figure out
when
everything's
she was
okay.
22,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had a lump that had to be biopsied, and it was negative.
Hmm.
But 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 yeah. So if you get a false positive and it turns out to be nothing, that's fine. If you get a false positive or a real positive and it turns out to be cancer and you caught it early and you have more treatment options, that's awesome. So I think it's worth it. The screening tests. I'm going to get a colonoscopy in about 2 weeks. And is it the most fun I've ever had? No, but it's actually pretty easy to do. You know, you change your diet for a couple days. You drink some liquid that makes you poop like a bandit, and then you go take a nap, and then you get to, for me, I have to do it every 3 years. So I get to wait another 3 years after this. So, and the other thing that I think a lot of people are not aware about is that if you have a long history of smoking cigarettes, it's recommended that starting at maybe around age 50, you would get a yearly low dose CT scan, so an imaging scan of your chest to look and see if you're developing any suspicious nodules in your lungs, because early detection of lung cancer gives you a lot more options. You could maybe just have surgery and possibly radiation, no chemotherapy. So it really improves the outcome. So I'm a big fan of screening. I'm a big fan of controlling the risk that we can control. Get your exercise, moderate alcohol intake,
Oh, weed smokers, same drill.
eating healthy, um, getting your skin cancer checks, wear sunscreen. Um, yes, our dogs are hungry. So,
Okay, come over here. Or
our son is home from
coming home
work.
from work.
Our son is home from work, so they're excited.
All right.
So anyway, and then we need to talk about grief and loss.
So we can connect this discussion to cancer because, certainly when she got diagnosed, you go through the whole grief process. It was, it's scary. So anyways,
Yeah.
here we go.
And you're going to experience grief that's related to actual death, where you've lost a loved one. Both of my sons lost good friends in high school and after high school
Both to
to
suicides.
suicide. John and I have lost almost every member of our family as they've gotten older and passed away.
I've
Um,
lost dogs.
we've lost many
Same
dogs.
drill.
Um,
And then you may just last week you may have had a breakup,
yeah.
and you go through that
When
too.
when
Lose a job, it doesn't matter.
when I first got out of law school, I was working and I had something bad happen in a case at work. And I was crushed because it was the first bad thing that had happened to me out of law school. I started crying and I cried so long and so hard that John thought I was going to get dehydrated. He said while I was sleeping that night, I was crying in my sleep. So things will happen to you. You're going to get beat up by life. Um, but what I want you to take away from our discussion of grief and loss is be patient with yourself. Allow yourself to feel the feelings. Bottling them up probably doesn't help. The famous research that's been done about grief by Kubler-Ross talks about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, despair, acceptance. It's not really a linear process. You might skip
You jump
steps.
around.
You might go to the end and then start over at the beginning again.
And these professor types, they over intellectualize everything. So you may not ever have
So
even
that may
anything like
not
it. So.
that may not be how you experience
Right.
grief. There's a lot of different theories out there about how to experience grief. And the more you love someone, the more you grieve when you lose them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have really strong, powerful
This
grief.
is an important disclaimer right here. Okay.
Yeah, if for some of our students, you've experienced loss recently and it's too soon or too difficult for you to speak publicly about it, so you're welcome to contact me and I can give you an alternative assignment where you just send me your post, or if you're comfortable writing your response and sending it to me but you're not comfortable posting it with the whole class, that's okay too. So we just want to be sensitive to the fact that, you know, we've all had different experiences and we've all kind of, you know, had different encounters with grief and
And
loss.
like Julie said, it doesn't have to be death. It could be, you know, job loss. It could be, you know, you just lost a game to Michigan. Okay, you can write about that. Okay,
Yes.
you know, it could be, you know, you just got a D in your organic midterm. You can write about that. So anyway,
Yes.
okay, I think we're done here.
In fact,
Good
I
job
think
is
just
done.
taking organic, you can write about that.
You know what?
There's a lot of grief
I got a
there.
C minus.
I was so bad at organic that I think I took
Yes.
it twice and I still never understood a
Right.
word.
I wasn't dedicated.
No. But
Okay.
I still went on to be a successful
Me
person. So,
too.
okay.
All
All
right.
righty. Well, everyone take care. Have a good
Right
week.
on. All right.
Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Peace.